Welcome back to the channel, my brothers, or welcome to the channel if this is your first time. My name's Andy R and this is the Brotherhood of Men. If you live in a country or a state that has no fault divorces, you don't have a marriage. No, you don't. I'm going to explain all of that in this video, so let's get started. So, as I said, if you live in a country or a state that has no fault divorces, you don't have a marriage. Now, what could I possibly mean by that? Surely you still had the ceremony, you still signed that piece of paper that basically enslaved you to a woman. You see, men have known for quite some time that marriage is a high-risk, low-reward game for men. They also know, or should know, that marriage is also a low-risk, high-reward game for women. Because if that marriage fails, then she's most likely going to get the gold mine and you're most likely going to get the shaft. But if you live in a country or a state that has no fault divorces, you quite literally do not have a marriage. What you have is a relationship. And you had a relationship before you signed that legal document, so why did you bother getting married? Now, when I say you have no marriage, for the simple reason of the no-fault divorce. Let me try and put it with an analogy of cars and accidents on the road. Sorry, collisions on the road. There used to be a thing called RTAs, road traffic accidents. That's what the police would write down in their logbooks when they came upon an accident between two cars. RTCs, road traffic collision. That was the shorthand for talking about those incidents. And then some bright spark, a man more than likely, used that very knowledge in his defence in court. Because he said, well, if it was an accident, how can I be held responsible for it? It was an accident. Even the police have put it down as an RTA, a road traffic accident. Therefore, I can't be held responsible for something that was accidental. I didn't do something wrong to cause it, and therefore it was accidental and an accident. He probably won in court, but it wasn't very quick before the police stopped using RTA. And now they use RTI or RTC, so it's a road traffic incident or a road traffic collision, because they came to the right decision that there is always someone to blame for an accident. It isn't an accident, someone is to blame, someone's at fault. Whether it was inattention whilst driving too fast, whether it was a vehicle malfunction or inaction by a driver or a pedestrian, whatever happened, somebody was to blame. So it was no longer classed as an RTC. And that's how marriages are. If they break down, there is always someone to blame, or both people to blame. They could both be toxic in that marriage, and therefore it collapsed because they were at each other's throats all the time, constantly shouting at each other, but in such a way that they didn't have a very constructive marriage, and therefore it collapsed because they were both to blame, or one was to blame. Now, there used to be 5 categories, and there were main categories, the obvious things you would think about. That was cheating, abuse, the usual suspects that showed that the marriage was beyond repair. But there was always somebody to blame. And when the filing went in, the reason for the collapse of that marriage had to be stated. Otherwise, a divorce could not be granted. But as soon as you say, like it used to be with the road traffic accident, it fell apart because nobody was to blame. Well, you don't have a marriage. That means anybody, for any reason, at any time, can just go to the court and go, I don't want to be married anymore. What's your reason? Yeah, I'll go on. but I just don't want to be with him, or I don't want to be with her. Now, when I said him first, that's because the statistics prove this out. 70% of divorces are instigated by women. They're the ones who tend to be the ones filing for divorce 70% of the time. Because for them, a marriage is low risk, high reward. If she divorces, she's still going to come out well off, because she can take so much from the man. Whereas for a man, it's high risk, low reward. There's very little he's gaining by marriage. But with a no-fault divorce hanging over that as well, there's nothing he's gaining in that marriage. Quite literally, nothing. At any time, she can turn around and say, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. No reason. You see, at least when they had to give a reason, they had to give a reason. And if the man was able to prove that reason was a lie, that's fraud upon the court. So once again, the courts, the legal system and politicians have bent over backwards to make it easier for women. Once again, at the detriment of men, by saying, you don't need to give a reason now. If you're not happy. Whoever told anybody in this world you had a right to happiness? That you were deserving of happiness. Happiness is a state of being, not an emotion. But that's usually the reason women give later down the line for the fact that they got married. I wasn't happy in the relationship. No, and you did nothing to make yourself happy. You did nothing to improve that situation, because it was made so easy for you just to end it and look elsewhere for greener pastures, which they very rarely find, especially later in life. A little statistic was showing that by 2030, 80% of, what was it? It showed that by 2030, 50% of women over the age of 40 were going to die alone. Were on their own, with no prospect of ever being married. Women, when they found that statistic, they were celebrating it as though it was a win for them. The truth of the matter is that's the last thing women want. Men are quite happy on their own. In fact, men in relationships will find things to do on their own, to have some downtime, to have some quiet time, so that they're not getting nagged to do things all the time, just to unwind, to reset the brain. Women always need to be around people. It's because that's the way they're built. They're more social creatures than men. They work on more of an emotional level, chaotic almost. But if you have a state, or you have a country that has passed laws to allow no-fault divorces, you're living in a state or country that, one, does not hold marriage in any regard, and two, make sure that you do not have a marriage in the first place. You see, when it was an RTA, you could claim, well, no one's to blame, it's an accident. Just like women can claim now in the marriage. Well, it fell apart because of no reason, it just fell apart. Whereas before, it was you had to give a reason for this marriage falling apart, and you had to wait a reasonable amount of time to give you time to reflect upon what might have been a hasty decision to. So in this country, in England, when laws are passed here, they're passed for two countries, England and Wales. We've just passed a law, our Parliament has, by a Conservative government, not a very conservative thing to do, to allow no-fault divorces. No one's at fault. That's basically said anybody who gets married now, or is already married, you don't have a marriage. You might as well have just stayed together as living together. You might as well have just stayed as friends with benefits. All you've got now is a relationship, because that marriage certificate, although detrimental to men, and you know my views on marriage, I've done enough videos on them, but it's not for men. And it hasn't been for a long time, because the court system and the way things are set up are so skewed against men and so in favour of women that men end up getting the shaft and the women get the gold mine. But like I said, it's a low risk, high risk situation. It's a low risk for women and a high reward. For men, it's high risk and low reward. It's not for men. But now it's even less so. If you ask most people, why did you get married? They will usually answer. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I went through this with a young man just recently. And I said to him, why are you getting married? And he said, because I love her. And I said, don't you love her now? And he went, what do you mean? I said, well, you're not married yet, are you? And he went, no. And I said, do you love her now? And he said, yeah, of course I do. Of course I love her. I went, so what's going to change when you walk down that church aisle, sign that piece of paper, say I do? What's changed for you? He says, well, then she'll be my wife. And I said, and does that mean you will love her more, the same, or less? I said, well, you can't say that you'll love her more because you don't know what that looks like. You can say you will love her the same because you know how much you're in love with her now. And you can't really say you'll love her less because you don't know what's coming down the line. So nothing will have changed from you as you are now to you being a married man, other than you're married. And then I explained to him about how bad things are for a man in marriage, as in women are very rarely willing to put in the effort. They all want to be married, but they don't want to be wives. It's just the same with children. They all want kids, but they don't want to be a mother. They soon want to go back to work and palm their child off to childcare, spending all of the money that they earn in that work to give to a stranger to look after their own children. That is just mind-blowing. It just shows that they don't want to be a mother, but they want kids. They want to be married, but don't want to be a wife, because so few women nowadays are wife material. They don't know how to cook. They don't know how to clean, how to run a budget. Now, this isn't all women, obviously. I mean, there are still some damn good women out there. I know I've got one. But that's not saying it to brag or anything, but there are good women out there who do know these roles that need to be, these skills to be a wife. So few women do, but they all want to be one. They all want to be married, so they've got that ring on the finger. They can flash it at their single girl friends going, look what I did, I caught myself. Where's your husband? Doing the one-upmanship. At the same time, are doing absolutely nothing as a wife. But if you live in a state or in a country that has, like I do now, unfortunately, that has no fault divorces, you don't have a marriage. You just have a relationship. And like I said to this young man, I said, listen, mate, you can get married. I can't stop you. I'm not even going to try and stop you. All I can do is give you the statistics, give you the facts, tell you what you might have ahead of you. 50% of marriages fail. 70% of divorces are instigated by women. Most of the reason they give for divorces are not big things like finances, not big things like adultery. Most of them fail because they were not happy in the marriage, because they didn't work at being happy in the marriage. But you are prepared to walk down and sign a piece of paper that basically enslaves you to a woman, and now we live in a society where it can be ended for no reason at all. There's not even the 2-year waiting list like there used to be. Now, within 6 months, finished. So you haven't even got time to reflect. Even the woman who, many times a woman can instigate the divorce and within a year realise that she's made the worst decision of her life and tried to backpedal. It doesn't often work, because once a man's been rejected, he thinks, why should I go back to that? You could reject me again. But she has time to reflect on her actions, or he has time to reflect on his actions and try and change the situation. But it's been done so quickly, which tells you that you have a state or a government that doesn't respect marriage, has no bounds for it, and is quite happy for you to get shafted as a man, while quite happily giving the gold mine to a woman. Anyway, that's my little rant. That's my talk on if you have a state or a country that has no fault divorces, you don't have a marriage, you just have a relationship. So, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the bell notification. That way you don't miss out on future content. And I don't think you want to miss out on future content, because hopefully what I'm saying to you is resonating in your brains, is starting to wake you up to some of the realities that you know and are already facing out there, and also giving you a reason why you're facing those things out there. Nothing else. Give the video a like, it does help the channel, and also leave a comment, because I love reading your comments. You, my brothers out there, have some brilliant insights into what's going on out there. You're seeing it like I am firsthand, and you're thinking logically about your decisions, and that's great, and I love reading your comments. I don't necessarily answer them all, but I can promise you I do read them all. Anyway, I'm going for a cup of tea because, well, I think I've earned one. You, my brothers out there, you take care of yourself, because if you don't, who will? And I'll talk to you soon. Bye now.